Last time on Comic Showcase, we dug into New Warriors #1 to see how a team starting from the ground up was formed. Newcomer Night Thrasher assembled a ragtag team of heroes from Marvel's past. Nova, Firestar, Marvel Boy, Speedball, and Namorita joined Thrasher's one-man war against crime. Things soon changed for our young heroes as the former Herald of Galactus, Terrax, appeared on the scene. Once the dust settled, a legend was born. The New Warriors was a comic that I grew up reading, and like many others, enjoyed for its combination of superheroics and tales of the human condition that would make even the craziest daytime soap opera seem tame by comparison. Both aspects kept the story going until the mid-90s, when the first volume was unfortunately cancelled. Still, to this day, fans remember the characters and stories that made this book into one of the best of 90s Marvel. How is this done? How is this book different from other Marvel titles that also gave us characters that were all too human? Face front, true believers, we're about to find out. There were a lot of comics in that box, weren't there? About 70 or so issues of the New Warriors, and I've read them all, starting with the one that started it all. I spent a long time trying to figure out just how I'm going to cover the storylines. Was I going to cover them issue by issue? What parts did I want to talk about? I didn't want to leave anything out, and to talk about everything would take forever. So, I decided to take a different approach. I'm going to cover the charter members of the team and their storylines over the course of Volume 1's run. The arcs intertwined creatively, and the stories the team found themselves in had events which trickled down toward the other members of the team, like shockwaves. It kept the stories fresh and entertaining, while some of the stories tended to be very, very heavy. It's what people liked about the book, like I said, and won it serious acclaim. Thankfully, it wasn't one of those PSA books. Those are boring and heavy-handed. What we're talking about here felt very real to the reader. And one of the more heavier stories is starting us off as we discuss Vance Astrovic, aka Marvel Boy, who later becomes Justice. Vance Astrovic, aka Marvel Boy, if you remember from my FAQ, was a Jewish mutant telekinetic whose powers were activated by his future self named Vance Astro. That meeting didn't destroy the space-time continuum, and instead created an alternate reality for Vance Astro to come home to. Our Vance, though, wasn't so lucky. His father got wind of his son's growing mutant powers and began beating him in order to, quote, beat the mutant gene out of him. Angelica often helped Vance deal with the issue since she too was also a mutant, and the two began to have a romantic relationship. Hey, they didn't pair up just because they were minorities. Get that through your heads right now. Not long after they began to date, Vance was injured during a battle where he helped to save a pregnant woman who had gone into labor. At home, his father confronted him on his injuries and began hitting the mutant. In a last-ditch effort to defend himself, and his mother, who he also tried to hit, Vance telekinetically shoved his abusive father through a wall, killing him. Vance was then arrested as the cops came around looking to see what happened at the hospital while the Warriors dealt with their own problems. Wait until I cover Night Thrasher's story to talk about that drama. Firestar got wind of what was happening with her boyfriend and stood by his side as Vance was put on trial. You might be thinking, where's Charles Xavier? Surely he could have helped. Yeah, that's a good question. Well, don't look at me, I don't have the answer. The jury found Vance guilty of first-degree murder and negligent homicide despite testimony from the Thing and Firestar as he could have simply restrained his father. This was demonstrated by the prosecutor shooting a gun at Vance, which turned out to be blanks, and he telekinetically captured the smoke. He was then sentenced to serve time at the Vault, a prison for superhumans. Naturally, Firestar was upset at the verdict, and she, Namorita, and Nova sought to save Vance from his imprisonment by stopping the van delivering him to prison. Vance elected to remain in prison despite his teammates' efforts, and promised Firestar that he'd see her again, and that one day they'd be married. This has all the makings of a made-for-TV movie, doesn't it? Wait for him, Red. Wait for him. While in prison, Vance helped to calm a riot which occurred due to the prisoner's unfair treatment. Never mind the fact that he was often treated better than the other inmates. He was also greeted by a message from Vance Astro himself, saying that how in his reality, his father didn't beat him that severely, and he knew that our Vance was a good man, who would grow to be a great symbol. Eventually, Vance was let out of prison and was a changed man. No, not like that. This is the vault, not Oz. To the one person who actually got that joke, you're welcome. He decided to choose a new code name. His name was going to be Justice. And despite the anti-mutant protests he encountered on his way out of prison, he was going to prove himself a hero while dealing with what he had done to his father. Of course, the anti-mutant protest didn't help matters as he tried to explain his position to the anti-mutant hate group, the Friends of Humanity, who were camped out in front of his mother's house. Speaking of her, she wasn't much help either, as he left to think for a bit. Eventually, he did return after an adventure with X-Force. Another change for Vance came during the epic storyline Time and Time Again, where the Warriors were sent by the Sphinx to different time periods. Vance was sent to his own father's timeline, and he sought to end the cycle of violence before it started. While in the past, Vance found out that his father was a closeted homosexual who was forced to be straight in order to appease his abusive father. Vance tried to convince his father, Arnold, that anger wasn't the right way to go. Arnold shoved him aside and decided to obey his father's wishes. Vance tried to confront his grandfather on the issue and realized that he would be ruining the timeline, and worse, perpetuating the cycle of violence that had plagued his family since the beginning. Armed with the knowledge of what happened with his father, he returned to the present and began a stint as the leader of the New Warriors up until the series was cancelled. Vance and Angelica's romance continued as he helped her to deal with the fact that her powers could be making her sterile, and in the end, she proposed to him as the team prepared for one last battle near the end of the series. While Vance's life was a veritable roller coaster of drama, Namorita had her own challenges to face. The cousin of Namor hit a snag during her early days with the Warriors when the scavenger known as the Sea Urchin was stealing Atlantean artifacts. She was beaten to a bloody pulp and went to her cousin for help. Namor refused, and she donned a special ceremonial armor to use to take revenge on him for the beating. I didn't know pink was the color of revenge. I'll have to note that. She won handily, and once Night Thrasher left the team after a disagreement I'll get into soon, she became the leader of the group. She ended up getting the Warriors involved in conflicts in, not Iraq, Transvaal. There she killed the country's dictator as she tried to resolve a conflict via her own Atlantean code of ethics. In the end, she decided it would cause too much trouble for her cousin to take further action, and decided that discretion would have been the better form of valor. In front of the UN, Nita admitted she killed the terrorist leader based on her own Atlantean moral code, and that she didn't represent Atlantis' interests. Namorita was shocked to find out that she was really a clone of Namora, Namor's other cousin. See, Spider-Man? Marvel's got other clones to deal with. This revelation unfortunately didn't sit well with her, and she took to the bar to drink away her sorrow and frustration. There she hit on a man who was the head of a gang known as the Poison Memories. The man was named Ashu, and he took advantage of her since he knew who she was, and slept with her. Nita woke the next morning with her address book with the names of all her teammates' relatives in it stolen. The Poison Memories began kidnapping relatives and even killing the grandmother of Elvin Halliday, who went by the name of Rage. After the Warriors dealt with the gang, Nita felt horrible about her actions and decided to leave the team for a while, after giving Rich a nice kiss before she goes. We need a collective awe here. Thank you. Seeking to return home to Atlantis, she was denied entry as her clone nature has been revealed. This proved to be the final straw, as suddenly her body began to mutate into a form resembling ancient Atlanteans. Don't you hate it when that happens? It seems the change was brought on by oxygen deprivation and the DNA the Atlantean scientist named Vera spliced into the cloning vat. On arrival to Atlantis, Nita's body began to mutate into a light blue-skinned proto-Atlantean creature. She then became known as Chimera and rejoined the New Warriors, where she rekindled her relationship with Rich, who of course accepted her changes and appearance without hesitation. The relationship lasted for most of the run until Nita was captured by the terrorist group known as the Undertow, where she was brainwashed into being an assassin. This led to the Warriors coming to blows with the Avenging Sun, who was not too pleased about her disappearance. Eventually she was rescued by Night Thrasher and Rage on a tip from the Mad Thinker, a Marvel character who likes to push characters to their potential, and seemed to have an interest in the Warriors since he popped up in the book from time to time. These things come in threes, and the last character I'm talking about today is the man called Nova. For this one, you may want to take a break and come back. This is gonna take a while. After Night Thrasher restarted his powers, Nova didn't exactly have an easy time with things. Subtle hints of an epic story were peppered through New Warriors number 2 to 10 as an old enemy of his returned in the form of the Sphinx, and a new female version calling herself Lady Sphinx. Sphinx and Lady Sphinx used the power of the mystical Caststone to create a reality where ancient Egypt ruled the world. Holy House of M, Batman! Nova helped to save the day as he was one of the first heroes to have his memories restored by the living embodiment of the truth. This story was called Forever Yesterday, and was the first of many to be centered on Nova, and was the one that got me interested in the series in the first place. There was just something about Nova fighting his old enemy once again that seemed captivating. Moving on, because there's a lot more Nova to talk about. Once Forever Yesterday concluded, Dwayne presented him with a replica of his old costume as a way of saying thanks, and as a way to apologize for, dropping him off of a building. Ryder still remained a bit distrustful of the man. He still had one more loose end to take care of. His parents got wind of him being Nova again, and he had to explain just how he got his powers back. I imagine it went something like this. So, Dad, this guy threw me off of a roof. What? No, it was cool. I had a 30% chance of my powers coming back. I could have been street pizza, but hey, it all worked out. Dad? When he wasn't trying to explain things to his parents, Ryder often took time to train Miki Musashi and Mike Jeffries, two teens who found the old torpedo armor and became the hero known as Turbo. Miki was always a little reluctant about using the suit for hero work, and Jeffries was found to be quite the superhero encyclopedia. Still, Rich trained them because, after all, he had a lot of experience under his belt. During the Poison Memories incident, Ryder's brother Robbie lost a finger. A loss I'm sure was shown in future comics. Continuity? What's that? During a story called The Star Lost, Rich found himself wondering about Nita, who had recently left, and his brother. All this happened while he was juggling time with his then-girlfriend, Laura Dunham. See, Spidey, you're not the only one who had to juggle civilian life with hero work. Rich was unaware that in Limbo, the former Nova Centurion called Garthan Saul was emerging from his exile after sensing the presence of the Force, the Nova Force. Saul, however, wasn't one of the nicer Xandarians, and was out for Rich's blood. While that was going on, mysterious cloning baths activated and restored the former queen of the Xandarians, Adora, to life. Marvel Comics got clones around every corner. It should be noted that this took place 40 issues into the book. What took them so long? Garthan Saul was defeated, and Rich was worried that Adora would strip him of his powers like she did before. She says that wasn't necessary, as she needed to rebuild the core, with Rich as Nova Centurion Prime. The World Mind informs Rich that the reasons why his power was so dormant was to prevent Saul from taking it. With him gone, Nova could once again protect Earth as Centurion Prime. A few issues later, Sphinx returned, and this time Lady Sphinx was on the Warriors' side, as the team was scattered throughout time. Ryder, though, found himself in a reality where he never lost his powers and became a hotshot hero. The drawback was that Earth had been decimated. Rich trained with the other Nova to fully unlock the power of Centurion Prime, and found a way home doing so. This spark of his newfound abilities helped to put him on the path to being a hero we saw in Annihilation, and in that Nova comic I reviewed a while back. After time and time again, Rich became angry over the loss of Nita to the Undertow, and sought to take the fight to them to liberate her. Sadly, she was brainwashed by the evil organization, and the former lovers came to blows. Rich tried to fight as hard as he could, and the Undertow vanished without a trace, leaving the human rocket distraught, and vowing to search the planet if he had to for the woman he loved. Rich returned to the Big Apple with the Warriors, and confronted Dwayne on the issue of him forming the Warriors as a part of a vendetta, and how he keeps coming and going from the team he formed. It was here that a line was drawn, and Thrash and Rage were left to their own devices since he wasn't much of a team player and wasn't around to help the Warriors save Nita in the first place. After an event in his own comic left him powerless, and Garth installed the new Nova Prime of Earth, Rich tried to get his powers back by jumping off buildings. Thankfully, he was saved by Turbo, and the team was called into action when the dire wraiths were attacking the city. Sal helped to save the day, and Rich was more than a little cautious regarding Sal's sudden good guy act. I would be too in his place. Ryder has a good point. But can a leopard really change his spots? In New Warriors 65, Rich and the other warriors found the Undertow once again, and this time, even without his powers, Ryder was determined to bring Nita back to the team. This time he enlisted the aid of the other warriors and their friend Alex's sentient spaceship. Yes, I know what I said. Just go read issues of Power Pack. It'll make more sense. Nita sees Ryder on the monitor and begins to break free of the brainwashing and warns the team to leave. Undertow took so much from Nita, and yet it was her love that brought her back from the brink for a moment. Jeez, comic. Play with our emotions, will ya? Somebody cutting onions? The powerless Rich was still helpful in the last issues of the series when the dire wraiths returned and demanded the torpedo armor. Rich and the other warriors fought valiantly. However, there was a price. Garth Saul was dying after a harrowing battle with the queen of the wraiths, known as Falks. He transferred his powers to Rich, and Nova was once again reborn. With his Nova powers returned, Rich was instrumental in ending the threat of Queen Falks of the dire wraiths once and for all. He reconnected with Nita and the pair resumed their romantic relationship. In the end, Rich also made amends with Dwayne about the secrets, lies, and that whole dropping off of a building thing. There was a lot of action just for those three characters, weren't there? Next time I'll be covering Firestar, Night Thrasher, and Speedball, and then analyze everything. Until then, I'm Seafarer, thanks for watching Comics Showcase, and I'll see you in the funny pages. Wonder if... One more take. Holy house of... Shit. Ow. Don't hurt yourself.